Was there a moment where you were like, okay, I have a power, so to speak?
I think a lot of that was around medical intuitive stuff. So when I was younger, a lot I was wanting to go and put my hands on people and do energy healing without ever being taught energy healing. And I think it was well received, more well received when I was able to tell people that they had certain physical ailments, and then they would go to the doctor, it would be confirmed. And so,
Okay.
I had that sort of corroboration, and then the reflection I was getting off that was not as bad as, say, when I would talk about somebody's dead relative wanting to say things to them.
Yeah, right. Um, a little bit more about your childhood. You had a very rough start. You've openly talked about suffering abuse at the hands of someone else. And I only bring that up because, because I know you've talked about it before, but I think it's important because you've used that experience to turn it into expertise. And I think a lot of people don't follow that concept a lot. Do you know what I mean? Like they don't get that about you. And in researching a ton of stuff about you, I really felt that it seems, correct me if I'm wrong, that it's been important for you to talk about what you've been through. Number one, because it makes you relatable to people that have gone through it, but because that's where you derive your mastery from. And so I do want you just to touch on it a little bit about what you went through. And then the real question is, how did you personally find the wherewithal to get yourself out of it, to say I'm worthy of being someone else, or I can get out of this?
Ooh, that's like a lot.
Yeah,
So
sorry.
to super, I don't know like how deep to go because it's real intense, but because of my abilities, I essentially caught the radar of somebody who is in the town that was close to where I grew up, who had a real interest in this kind of non-physical stuff, and he approached my parents as a mentor of sorts. And my parents, of course, didn't know what to do with me. I was this miserably unhappy, hypersensitive kid. They didn't understand what was going on with me. They've got these doctors saying I'm mentally ill, these other people that are like, whoa, she's got an incredible gift. They just didn't know what to do, right? So when this mentor essentially came in and said, look, she loves horses. She doesn't know what to do with her gifts. Trust her with me, basically. I know what to do. And they said yes. And the reality was quite different than what he had put forth. It was really capitalizing on an opportunity
Mhm.
to set up a like horribly abusive dynamic for the period of 13 years. And it was like horrific ritual abuse and trafficking. So yeah,
Wow.
my childhood was like a literal living nightmare, like the kind of thing that belongs on CNN. Like it's totally not normal in any way. Um, yeah, so I escaped when I was 19.
Mhm. And when you say escape, did you physically escape, or was it something where finally you were able to, be old enough that you can make your own decisions and get out?
It's kind of both because men like had me in my childhood. They create so much mental programming that ultimately they want to be able to have control over you without having to go chase you because you don't really own somebody's psychology if you have to go chase them in a car.
Mm.
That being said, there's definitely a risk of some retrieval like that happening. So it was a little bit of both. I ended up after a really horrific experience with him when I was 19, jumping into a car and driving, just I mean like physically running away, like driving to a place where I had met a man only twice before this, but for some reason I trusted him and I broke into his house actually. And, that was the beginning of me staying away. So to begin with, it was like there's such huge consequences for running away. I don't know what I just did. Why did I just do that? I should just go back. And then it's like 1 day turns to 2 days, turns to a week, turns to now I'm in real serious trouble if I go back, turns into a month, turns into like I think I actually have to go into hiding at this point.
Mm. Yeah. And at any point, I mean, you hear these stories nowadays of people that are kidnapped by their captors and kind of fall for them or end up trusting them. Was there
Oh,
any bit of that with what you went through when you were younger?
this man was my life. He convinced me that he was my real father, in fact, and that basically there was an excuse for why I look different than my parents might look because I look more like he does, and I'm just elaborate stories. But yeah, there's no way to not bond with somebody who's got that much leverage over your life. It's impossible. It's human psychology. unanimously what will happen when a person perceives themselves to be in a powerless or captive environment. You will bond to the perpetrator. And I
Right.
100% did that. In fact, getting to the place in therapy in my early 20s to realize that maybe the things that he was doing was not out of love was one of the hardest things to get myself to.
Mm.
I remember just fighting, like with this ritual trauma therapist, just fighting, you know, for the things that he's doing or loving, because that's of course the excuse they love to give, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.